moving into these international territories, the biggest challenge was honestly the logistics. With Passport, what we've done is incrementally selected new countries to go into, launched with Passport in those countries, and at the same time, launched localized versions of our website, launched localized advertising so that we, in effect, can very quickly start a full test campaign of bringing inbound traffic, seeing if those people in that country are interested in buying our products when they can get it delivered quickly, cost effectively, and without any of this duty overhead.
E-commerce is not only a huge opportunity, measured in the trillions at this point, but fast growing. The global opportunity, just in really a finite number of countries that are easily accessible, can 2x your available customer base right out of the box.
Hello and welcome to the D2C podcast. I'm Eric Dick. Today we are going to be telling the tale of international expansion done right. We're kicking it off with Kasper Kubaka from Carpe. We also have Tom Griffin from Passport here on the D2C podcast. Kasper, kick us off, and why don't you give me a background on Carpe as a brand and its growth journey?
Absolutely. So David, my co-founder, and I started Carpe when we were freshmen in college. We had sweaty hands and we wanted to make a solution for our sweaty hands. And it really took off organically on Amazon and on our website, got a lot of support from people, a lot of 5-star reviews, and dermatologists really liked it. And dermatologists were actually the ones to encourage us to move to sweat products for all over the body, including just better underarm antiperspirant. So that's how we've grown over the past years, is making effective sweat solutions for the entire body and very effective solutions for the underarms, some of the top selling products on Amazon and online in the US. And in the last few years, we've really started expanding into demand that we saw from Canada, Australia, the UK, and other parts of the world. So I think that's what we're here to talk about today. And I'm excited to share that story and how Passport helped out.
Tom, can you give us some numbers on what the international opportunity really represents for D2C brands listening to this?
Sure. Well, I think we all know that e-commerce is not only a huge opportunity, measured in the trillions at this point, but fast growing. What I think is most relevant for brands like Carpe, US centric or US brand started in the US, is the number of available consumers globally, or even really just in a finite number of countries, represents sort of a 2xing of their market opportunity, or TAM. So, a product like Carpe that solves a problem that's had, by really anybody, it's certainly not a US specific problem. The global opportunity, just in really a finite number of countries that are easily accessible, can 2x your available customer base right out of the box.
And talk about the experience, because I, as a Canadian, like a lot of U.S. brands, when I buy something from a U.S. brand, it feels like a struggle. It feels like an afterthought for them in a lot of cases. I get hit with a big duty, an import duty that I'm not anticipating, which sort of affects my purchase experience. Kasper, maybe from your perspective, what was the international purchase experience like when people were buying your products before Passport?
Well, people were certainly finding us online, and we didn't really have many areas disabled for purchase on Shopify. So people from all over the world, from Kenya, from Indonesia, could go onto our website and purchase, but then they would get hit with that international shipping fee, which was just, I think, whatever USPS was charging for shipping. And what was even worse is that this was delivered duty unpaid. So we'd hear from customers all the time who found us somehow internationally. We weren't really doing any international advertising, but they came upon us organically. They wanted, they saw how good the products were. They saw the reviews and they wanted to try them. And then they'd make the purchase, have to pay $60, $70 for shipping. They'd wait 3 weeks for the product to arrive. And then they'd realize they have to go down to their local post office and pay the import duties to even pick up the product, because there was just no option for us to ship it while paying the duties. And at a certain time, we realized this opportunity is too big. We're not even trying to go into international markets, but we're seeing so much traffic, particularly from the larger English-speaking countries. So Canada, Australia, the UK, Canada being obviously the closest one because it's, shares a border with us. But you'd think that border is easier to do e-commerce across. It's actually quite challenging logistically if you don't have the right partner in place. And we decided to very intentionally start moving into some of these territories. So that meant localizing the website. That meant finding a shipping provider that could actually deliver these products in a timely manner and not have them get stuck at the border, not have them cost an exorbitant amount to where, people would not want to purchase them, and not have duty payment post pickup. Basically, We needed somebody who could get it across the border quickly, get it across the border cost effectively, and get it across the border with the duties paid so that the customer could immediately receive the product.
Did you know that a service out there like this existed? Or like, how did you go about finding something that does this niche task?
I think we explored a lot of shipping providers, but we'd heard about Passport. And what was really appealing about Passport is that it wasn't just shipping. It was handling all of the operational considerations that are required to get a product from our warehouse in the United States to a customer in, say, Canada or Australia. So that's obviously the logistics of shipping. But to do that cost effectively, you need somebody who's doing a high volume of this and able to get it across the border in a way that's fast and, in a sense, centralized. I think Passport consolidates a lot of shipments, so they move across the border quickly, but they also they're very cost effective for us. It's not like it's package by package. I think it's routed through centralized shipping centers, much in the way that UPS Mail Innovations works, or similar solutions. And the duties, right? The duties and the compliance and all of that stuff, that would be so difficult going into a new country, especially like Canada, that has different laws in every province, different duties and taxes in every province. Having a partner that will, from day one, basically handle that for us without a ton of upfront paperwork, mostly, finding the fastest and most cost-effective ways to be fully compliant, get the products in the hands of the customers, and just not create friction for either the brand or the customer. That's what we heard about Passport, and that's what we found when we were exploring solutions. That's what we found in Passport, and that's absolutely been our experience since then.
And that's what frees you up also to focus on the other core tenets of localization. Like you mentioned, having your own a website that treats people properly, ads that refer to that country potentially. And that's what I'm curious about. When you put Passport in place, were you already planning to be actually actively scaling these markets with ad spend versus then or were you just doing this just to field the native, to make a better experience for the people that were buying your product internationally?
Yes. So I think the people buying our product organically has always to us been international organic sales have always been kind of a rounding error where we don't think it's worth additional focus to address that, but they more are a signal of the opportunity if we went into those territories intentionally, right? So with Passport, what we've done is incrementally selected new countries to go into, launched with Passport in those countries, and at the same time, launched localized versions of our website, launched localized advertising so that we, in effect, can very quickly start a full test campaign of bringing inbound traffic, seeing if those people in that country are interested in buying our products when they can get it delivered quickly, cost effectively, and without any of this duty overhead.
Super interesting. Do you treat each audience separately in terms of campaigns within your approaches, or do you just open up and go broad within the whole group of customers that you now have?
We treat every country as its own country, basically, right? It's not like we have campaigns running across multiple countries, and it's certainly not like we have the US and then everywhere else. I mean, to Tom's point, there are massive opportunities abroad, but a lot of consumers internationally are used to drop shippers coming in from abroad and providing low quality service and just trying to buy cheap ad clicks that, are in many cases cheaper than in the United States. So to break through that consumer hesitation, to make them trust you, you really do have to cater to each country individually. So we have our Canadian site, our Canadian ads. We have our Australian site, our Australian ads. We have our UK site, our UK ads. We're exploring other countries, but with each one of those, it's country by country. It's not like, hey, let's move into the Middle East. Let's move into all of Europe. If you really want to win, you have to be very intentional about it, but the opportunities are quite significant.
Tom, from your perspective, what makes Kasper and Carpe such a great example of super users of your product?
Well, I think it starts with a couple of those words Kasper was speaking to earlier about that move from opportunistic to intentional, right? And, you can use opportunistic as a demand signal, but it's amazing how many brands just kind of always stay in that place of treating international or cross-border as an opportunity, but not being intentional about how they go after those markets. In fact, I remember I was speaking to your co-founder, David, about a year ago, and we were looking at some data around Australia. And, there'd been this sort of low level of Australia volume, and then 1 month it just shot up, and then it went sort of stair step up from that. And, I asked a question, and it was a very straightforward answer. Well, we turned on the country. Right. We went from an opportunistic approach to, running your playbook of local demand gen, and it had a massive overnight impact. And then you built from that month after month, within that country. Then I think the other thing that Carpe's done exceptionally well, which is part of that intentionality, is it's not just about demand gen, right? It's about site experience. It's about creating a digital experience so that consumer feels great about the purchase, right? And doesn't have this sense of, oh, I'm purchasing from a US company and, all the sort of expectations or concerns and conversion inhibitors that may come with that.
Super cool. And then Kasper, go back to the, you saw all these purchases coming in from these countries that went into your thoughtful process of where you were going to expand to. But calling out to audience members who are listening to this, what should they be looking for in terms of those KPI, or when it would start to really make sense for them to look into a tool like Passport?
I think it's different for every brand. I think this is one of those things that you just have to use a bit of intuition around and make a business decision on. I think if you look at organic traffic internationally coming to your site, and if that organic traffic is on par with population ratios, that's massive. Because for us at least, we weren't advertising at all internationally. It's just like, okay, this brand has a lot of international reach already through the presence that we have out there. The fact that we had conversions internationally, despite all of these inhibitors, despite the fact, I think we had a very significant amount of conversion in Canada, a lot of orders going to Canada before we launched with Passport, before we localized in Canada in any way. People buying in Canada, knowing this is a US website. Yeah, exactly. I was actually born in Toronto, so
nice.
I count myself among the sweaty Canadian bunch. And for us, it just seemed like we wouldn't know until we tried, but there was definitely a strong signal. We've seen that signal from a number of countries, Canada most of all. The reason we started with Canada, the UK, and Australia is simply because the language is the same, right? And so it's very easy to localize in those regions. We are trying to move into some regions where there's a little bit more translation. We're doing some packaging work there and similar things, and website work to start unlocking those opportunities. But moving into these international territories that speak English, the biggest challenge was honestly the logistics. Because in Meta, you just target the ads in a different country. That's a couple clicks, right? You have to make the creatives more regionally appropriate. In certain cases, it's adding a banner that we say, hey, we have free shipping to Canada. We're not charging you $70 for shipping to get there. We have free shipping to Australia. And in certain cases, it's actually looking at what ads perform more in those regions that might utilize local creators, that might utilize local focal points of what you emphasize about the product, what people resonate with, certain shibboleths of, hey, this is, a product that understands Australia, working with people there to understand what stands out about our product and what makes us seem overly American. But that is a lot easier. I think that's something that, a lot of brands in our space are very good at, is pivoting on marketing. This is what we spend a lot of our time being good at, is making good creatives, placing ads well. The logistics of moving into a whole different country is where it gets really tough, the logistics and the compliance. And that's where Passport just comes in and solves all of that, makes it all very, very easy. We have a 3PL that's a bit of a mom and pop 3PL. We absolutely love them. But, anytime we want to integrate with something new, which is very rare, I think the threshold for us to take on something new in our business, we like to keep focus. So it's a pretty high threshold. I think Passport probably would have been an integration we didn't even think about if we were with a more mainstream 3PL. But for this mom and pop 3PL, we knew because of all the duties involved, all the paperwork, we'd have to integrate Passport with the 3PL. And that wasn't challenging at all. That went very smoothly. Integrating with our website went very smoothly. And whenever challenges have come up to any extent, like if Australian tax, for example, I think reached out to us a while ago, Passport was immediately talking with us and, communicated with everybody, kind of stood up and took ownership of the entire situation and basically said yeah, we're handling this for you guys, and got it all resolved very quickly. So it truly isn't just a promise of we'll make sure you're compliant internationally and we'll handle the shipping. It is practicing what they preach. Passport has, in every interaction that we've had with them, absolutely stood true to their promise of completely handling this for us and making it something that we don't have to worry about.
And then how long in are you with Passport and this international expansion, Kasper? And then what does that look like for your business? Obviously, the juice is worth the squeeze at this point, but what can you say to quantify the international opportunity for Carpe so far?
It feels like 2 or 3 years. I think in terms of quantifying, we do feel like we're just getting started, but we already have dedicated dashboards for each country, right? So it's not like, hey, this is a fun side project. When we're looking at our daily reports every day, we've got the US, we've got Canada, Australia, UK. These are serious opportunities for us. And I think the only thing that is holding us back from moving into even more countries is that we want to balance our focus, right? We think there's still a lot of upside left in growing in the few international territories that we've moved into. We are a pretty small, lean team here, but I think that we will continue adding countries with Passport as we believe that, hey, that's where our best opportunities are right now with our marketing focus.
I lived in Asia for a couple of years, and I know they're very anti-sweat there, so that could be quite a big market.
I think
eventually.
so. We've looked at Singapore. We've looked at what's interesting is you will hear about countries that are like, oh, this country's, everybody there speaks English. They do most business in English. But if you just run ads willy nilly internationally in English, I've heard multiple differing perspectives on this from different founders. My experience so far has been that trying ads in countries that even where most people might speak English, but that's not the first language, does not do well because you just stand out and you don't seem like a native brand. And it's not that I think people are disinclined to purchase from international brands. It's that they're disinclined to purchase from brands that don't clearly show that they've done the work to deliver a good experience to that country. I think customers are smart. And if they see that you're a brand that's just kind of blasting ads around the globe, targeting anybody who will click, they'll think that you're not going to deliver a good experience to them. Whereas with Passport, if we are very intentional about these territories, we can assure that we will deliver a good experience to these territories where we're advertising, where we're shipping, and Passport enables us to do that.
Yeah, I think that's one of our main goals, right? Is not just to serve you in the markets you've been intentional in and you're scaling in, but to make it incredibly easy for our customers to do experimentation. We want there to be essentially zero barrier to you saying, well, let me turn on this country and see, right? And I think for, most great e-commerce merchants I've met, that desire to iterate, experiment is high. And one of the best things you can do to help them is just reduce the barriers to experimentation and iteration.
Find new customers. There's new customers all over the world. So just find those customers where they are, right?
When we have conversations internally about testing in new territories, we almost take the operations for granted because of how easy Passport has made it. To Tom's point, Passport makes it very, very, very easy to test in a new territory. And so the only consideration for us is really, do we want to go through the work of setting up a country dedicated subdomain, setting up ads specific for that country, which again is not a ton of work. But as with anything, I think there's no free lunch in even consumer D2C. I think it's not just about showing up and the customers will come. I think there's tons of opportunities abroad, but you do have to put in the work in any territory that you show up in. Passport makes it so that work in operations is almost trivial. But I think in other areas, you still want to be very intentional about where you're going to be testing and where you're going to be scaling.
Any other insights to add from all the brands that you work with, Tom, about ways that either brands are doing it wrong or ways that you other insights you have on how to do it right?
Sure. Well, I think, one of the things Kasper's highlighted really well is a number of ways you could do it right. And I think the outcome that Kasper has and the team at Carpe has is that they're able to grow international. They're growing international faster than domestic. But they're not having to do so in an unprofitable way. In fact, from my conversations with them, they're doing so in a way where it's still positive contribution margin and profitable business. And I think that's one of the mistakes a lot of brands make is they not just view international as opportunistic, but they view it as inherently less profitable or more of a problem, right? And, the phrase you use, so sort of is the juice worth the squeeze, right? And the reality is those things don't have to be true. They may be true for your experience today. They do not have to be true, right? They don't have to be true if you think about a good digital experience that converts, which Carpe has done in localizing that experience. Given the traffic acquisition costs can actually be lower, the profitability problem isn't the cost. The profitability problem is inherently solvable with just better conversion. In fact, you could potentially have a better LTV CAC, right, in some of these countries based on the cost of traffic. If you have a good site experience, if you have efficient operations, if you're managing all of the compliance issues, we've seen some brands who wind up paying the tax themselves because they haven't properly captured it, during the checkout experience, right? Oh, I'm less profitable because I'm having to pay these taxes. Well, you don't have to, you just don't have a good setup. So I think that's a great message. And it's really one of the things that, folks can learn from the Carpe story, which is you can be incredibly successful and very profitable cross-border.
And then from the customer perspective, is it just that does the duty that I would eventually pay just come part of the checkout process? Like what is it actually, or are there better ways to code the items that you're sending so the duty is less, or how does that actually work from the customer perspective, Tom?
Well, I think the most important part is, well, yes, it's part of the checkout experience. So you, the brand, aren't paying that or having that eat into your margins. And then the question is, for taxes and duties, how do you want to present that to the consumer? There's many countries, like let's say the UK as an example, where the expectation is the product price includes taxes and duties, right? So if you're selling to a UK consumer, they put something in cart, they get to checkout, and then, wow, what's this extra 20% tax? I'm not used to seeing that. That's an abandoned shopping cart, right?
Totally.
Right. So, the ability to do tax inclusive pricing as an example for a consumer that expects that means you're going to have a good converting experience, right? Sounds simple. Most people aren't doing that.
It's funny. I'm going through this right now because I'm running. We do everything at D2C with US dollars, but we're hosting this event and we have a lot of Canadians coming, and they're coming to a checkout page with US dollars. And it's like, I think it's actually affecting our conversion rates a little bit because people are getting sticker shock because the Canadian dollar is so bad right now.
But you need a test. So, and Passport makes it very easy to test, right? To Tom's point, we do not subsidize international sales with US sales. We're not going to be scaling internationally if we don't see that as, if we don't see any particular territory as being competitive in terms of contribution margin, in terms of the ability to grow both our top line and our bottom line the same way that the US is doing. And that requires a lot of testing and experimentation in terms of, are we offering free shipping and maybe making the products a bit more expensive because free shipping is important in the expectation for these consumers? Or are we charging separately for shipping? Are we, to Tom's point, including the tax in the product, or are we adding it at checkout and asking the customer to pay it then? And Passport makes it very quick and easy to test all of these things. And most importantly, the shipping is so cost effective that we're able to do something like include free shipping as part of our offer and still have a price point that's attractive to customers. So you're going to have to test a lot of things if you want to succeed internationally, but Passport makes that very quick and easy.
Super cool. And then Tom, just finally, who in our audience should be looking at Passport? Who do you want to manifest from our audience to join Passport?
So if you're a brand or a retailer and you have a product that has applicability outside of America, which the vast majority do, there's a huge opportunity there. Give us a call. Maybe you're not shipping internationally. Maybe you are, but you're not thrilled with the results. It doesn't have to be that way. There's a huge market opportunity. We can give you an easy button for accessing that market opportunity, and we can also help you learn how to do it efficiently. And this can become the fastest growing part of your business pretty quickly.
Pretty cool. So if you are sweaty like me, you can go to mycarpe.com and you can find some sweat care for yourself there. And if you're thinking of expanding internationally, you think that opportunity is for you, go to passportshipping.com and tell them D2C sent you. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. This is really interesting. It's the first time we've talked about this kind of part of international expansion. It's such an opportunity for people.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Kasper.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.